So we never know when the ride's going to end. We never know how much time we have. So nurture the relationships, which means you don't have time to be wasting around with people that you think that are connected to you are really not, because it adds no value to you. It adds no value to your life. And life is literally too short. If we live 101 years, bro, it's still too short. there is no long enough life. There's no longevity enough to say. So we have to capitalize on the time that we have. It's not really about how much you have or how many relationships that you have, but what you do with the relationships that you do have. It's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. Welcome to the Unscripted Authentic Leadership Podcast, a podcast where we're seeking to lead change while also seeking to understand. We also here's a platform for leaders to come together to unite, to develop and empower other leaders in the areas of business, family, and community. I'm your host, Lafayette Lang, joined by my co-host and brother, John Lebrun. Tonight, we're here to have another amazing conversation with you all. If you're listening to this, hit that share button. Tell somebody that they cannot miss this amazing conversation that is about to happen. John, we were just talking offline, backstage, about ride or dies, man. You made an amazing statement that got to share with the audience because it just resonated so much with me that I know someone else needs to hear what you had to say.
Yeah, so as Lafayette and I were just sharing about our brotherhood and our connection and our friendship, and we are if you don't know us, we're basically brothers. We always say it all the time, like we're brothers with other mothers. It's
Absolutely.
Just how it is. We're about 10 years difference in age. You wouldn't know. We live an hour apart. You wouldn't know. I go to his daughter's dance recitals. He comes to my son's football games.
That's right.
And not everyone, but we try to make it intentional to show up. Yeah. And to be quite honest, our kids, we call each other uncle. So I tell him his son was ill last week, and I said, hey, let him know. I said, just checking in on my nephew, and he said he's doing good, thanks, Unc. And he'll do the opposite. Say, hey, how's Andrew doing? Tell him Unc said go get him today. And so it's just how it is. And so we're talking about it, and it just led to the conversation, the thought of association, but not just any association. Because understand, a couple of years ago, I realized my association was pretty lame. Not that there was none. And Lafayette and I were just really starting to get into our brotherhood about 3 years ago. So I knew I had a couple people. But we hadn't we were just starting our podcast and so forth. And I told my wife, I need to be more intentional with my network. I need to create a good association because the one I had was pretty powerful for a lot of years. But then over time, the path I was going to serve and help people become better leaders, better men, better families, and better in their communities, my current association wasn't really as passionate about that same lane. And so what happens is over time we were just kind of dissipating, and I wouldn't hear from him much. And I told her, I said, I just need more ride or dies. I said, right now, if I died, I don't know who the 6 guys would be who are going to carry that casket. And it sounds mean, but the thought came to mind when my grandfather, he passed away when I was in my 20s, and he was John Sr. I'm the third, if you don't know this. And his grandsons were selected to carry his casket, so I carried it, and I was honored to do so. Great man. But then I thought to myself, who would be the 6 people that would carry mine? I'm surely they'll find some people. They're not just going to let it drag, I don't think. But I would hope that I would have 6 people who would be honored to carry that casket one day. Not just grandsons because their parents told them to, which that would be great too. But 6 people who are like, hey, excuse me, I'd like to be one of the 6. Hopefully there's 12 and they're fighting over the spots. Maybe they're double fisting the handles. But who are your 6 people that are carrying your casket? Will you have 6? That's the conversation I think people need to start asking themselves today. And it can go deeper than that, but let's start there.
My God, my God. Man, what's so resonating with me about what you're saying is people that are carrying your casket, your friends, those who are there for you when your life is over. It lets me know a few things. Number one, real friends show up. Real friends show up. And if you have people in your life that claim they're your friends or claim that they're part of your ride or die or claim that they're in your inner circle, but they're never there for you when you need them. They're never there for you to check up on not just you, but what's attached to you. I hope you all heard what John just said, that my 16-month-old son was sick last week, very sick. And he didn't have to check up on him the day after and the day after, but he did. He wasn't checking up on me. He was checking up on my son because he understood that what's important to me is important to him. So if it's important to me, it's important to my friends that I'm associated with. So number one, you have to ask yourself, do you have people in your life that show up for you? Not just when they can get something out of you or when it's advantageous for them. That's not a friend, that's a leech. What a leech does, it attaches itself to your body and it sucks the blood, which represents life, out of you until it's literally full to the point where it can get nothing else out of you. Then it detaches itself from you and leaves you alone, never to return again, to return the same life that is sucked out of you. You don't need those type of friends in your life. So that's the first thing I got out of what you said, bro. But number two, in order to carry someone's casket, you have to be able to carry the weight of who they are. And some people are attached to your life. They don't even have the capacity to carry who you are because they don't have the capacity to carry that weight of the gifting that you have, the gifting that you are. Let me say this, the anointing that's on your life, the grace that's on your life, they don't have the capacity to carry that weight. They don't have the capacity to carry you in the season to where you need to share some of that load. A friend is a person that carries the yoke with you. A yoke is an animal term, right, bro? When you see 2 oxen, they have a yoke around their neck and they are side by side so they can evenly distribute the weight to move forward in progress without one feeling more burdened than the other. That is what John is saying when he said, who do you have that's carrying your casket? Who do you have in your life that can carry the weight of who you are? Because please rest assured, there's coming a time where you're going to need somebody to help you carry the weight. You're going to need somebody to help you carry the load, that can come beside you and say, I've got your back. I've got your side. So you can make the journey that is necessary, that's called upon your life, because I'm here to make sure that you don't have to carry the weight by yourself. So you have to make sure your ride or dies to make sure they can carry the weight of who you are, because everybody can't handle who you are. Everybody can't carry the weight of who you are. And that's not arrogance. But when you know who you are, when you know what purpose you've been called to walk in, you understand that everybody's not in the same weight class. That's why when you look at boxers, somebody that's 250 pounds doesn't fight someone that's 150 pounds, because one is a lightweight and one is a heavyweight. It would be unfair to the 150-pound person, no matter how confident they are. They don't stand a chance against someone more than likely that's twice their weight. So you need someone in the same weight class as you, that's going to the same place as you, to carry who you are.
Wow, that's so powerful. What do you think? So we've all gone through life, and at different phases, we've had different association that we thought, yes, this is my ride or die.
Oh, yeah.
And then fast forward 5, 8, 10 years, we hang on to some of those. And I'm not saying you have to cut them off, But sometimes we hang on to them with our hearts and our minds.
Yes.
And we sit here and say, no, this is my best friend. You don't understand. We've been best friends since the 9th grade or the 10th grade. And it's almost like they feel defeated if they just admit we've just kind of gone separate paths. If that person called me tomorrow, I'd come help them out, obviously. Still love them. They have kids, love them. But maybe we're just on different adventures now. Maybe we just have different purposes. How does someone, you've probably experienced the same thing. I know I have.
Well, absolutely.
How does someone move on to that next phase when they're always just kind of grabbing and holding on to that old friend that just can't let go?
Yeah. No, bro, I've definitely been there. I won't say the individual's name, but I can remember, man, I used to have this friend in 6th grade. We were super close. I mean, he spent the night over my house. I spent the night over his house. Our parents were even close. Mm-hmm. But it got to a place to where when we grew older, we just grew apart, literally in distance and in a spiritual space and in goals and just different circles. And that's okay. For me, what I learned, bro, is that you don't always have to cut someone off. It'll almost be to a place to where either you put them in a different place or they become a burden. So what was once a support has now become a burden. So the person that you were running with, how do I know it's time to get rid of them to where you're now weighing me down to the point where you're hindering my progress? So yeah, you may not have to cut them off, but you do have to create enough distance to where that distance will actually create the cutoff necessary to where you don't have to be malicious. You don't have to be nasty, because I believe, bro, we don't handle relationships right when things come to an end. We don't always handle it right. We feel like that when something comes to an end, it has to be something that's abrupt or something that's nasty, or we have to drag someone on social media or drag the name to the mud. No, sometimes our paths in life will create the distance, and there will be sometimes a understanding that is spoken, and sometimes there's an understanding that's not spoken, but the fruit is what makes the separation. It is the fruit, to where literally the fruit that you're producing and the fruit that they're producing or not producing separates. We may grow up together, but there comes a time where it's called harvest time, and then harvest always makes the separation between those who have been producing and those who have not. So you don't always have to cut people off. Just be who God called you to be, produce, and your fruit will make the separation, and it'll make the difference.
Wow, I love that. Love it. So I don't know if you've been in this sort of space, but I've noticed for me, so I mentioned, I kind of alluded to earlier, about 2 years, but it's probably been closer to 3 years ago. I looked around and realized, man, my association today just kind of stinks. It wasn't all bad. It was okay. It was just kind of, as they say in emoji land, meh. It was like, just meh. I was watching the Emoji Movie, or at least a trailer with my kids, and there was one that was called meh. It was just kind of like, it is what it is. Nothing exciting. And it wasn't that my association needed to be exciting. I just knew that the current ones were not going to take the journey with me at any time from this step forward. They had taken journeys with me in the past. Some of them hung on for a while, some didn't. And some would even hang on because of our relationship. Meaning, I was moving forward in business. They were like, yeah, I'm with you. But I could tell they weren't, because their priorities weren't the same. But they didn't want to let me down because they loved me and I loved them as friends and brothers and sisters. And so they would hang on for a while. But there's only so much time that someone will do that.
Yes.
So eventually their actual priorities will show. And that's okay. And then, so after so many of those, I realized there's some guys hanging around, but I don't think there's any guys I'm going to be running with. So then I decided to take the next 2 or 3 years, and I said, I need to be intentional and start seeking. Just put the seed out there to God, the universe, everything out there. I need to find and be intentional about who's coming into my sort of sphere and just create those relationships. And I'll tell you what, it only took about a year to really get things rolling, and then now it's just like on a train, and you really start to connect with some great people who see things and want to impact the world the same. But I think one thing that people miss is they don't understand how to show up. I say that to say this. They don't think they realize how to show up to nurture those relationships.
Yes.
Because I've noticed there's been a lot of connections I've made where it's one-sided. They want you to be around as long as you're sort of providing them with, like, I don't know, referrals or something, or you're there serving them, but it's not always reciprocated.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's out of selfish nature or not. It might be. But I have noticed one thing. Most people don't understand how to show up in relationships when something's not needed. Meaning you had mentioned something about me checking in on your son or whatever.
Yes.
Which was cool. And it was just, I happened to hear that he wasn't feeling well. But I know in our relationship, if there's a week goes by and no one has said anything, somebody's sending a text message just to check in.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
It's not because anything's needed.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I think about somebody else randomly, I feel like God just puts them in my mind for a reason. Says, hey, check in.
Yes.
I'll send a message. And a lot of those times, like, wow, so good to hear from you. And to me, that's how someone can show up in a relationship, to show somebody, hey, I'm always here for you if you need anything. I'm always here for you because I appreciate you, not what you can do for me.
Yes.
Even, you know what I mean? We're running in the same direction. I just want you to know that I appreciate you, though. I don't need you for my own gain.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people forget that little seed that they should be constantly nurturing is, don't just show up when you need something from someone. That's not how you have a strong relationship.
Exactly.
That's why people always ask about, how do you find mentors? And like, well, you don't when you're only seeking them when you need something from them.
Yes.
It's just pinging in. Like, hey, how's things going? Life good? Kids good? Family good? Everybody good? Cool. I'll be back in 2 weeks to check in again.
Exactly.
Like, what are some ways that you kind of nurture these relationships?
I think for me, bro, I think it's adding fuel. Because we're talking about ride or dies, and it's like those people that, you know, when one of your friends, you guys are old enough to get a car, and everybody, there's always the friend that gets the car first.
Yeah.
And you have those people that get in your car, they want you to drive them everywhere, but they don't want to give you no gas money. They want
no
to
snaps.
No. You know, they don't have 5 on it. They don't, you know, and $5 used to be gas money. That's not gas money anymore. You know, but they don't even have $5 to contribute. They just want you to carry them to their destination and leave you on an empty tank. But friends that know how to nurture the relationship, that are ride or dies in the proverbial cars of life, the car is the relationship. They add fuel to make sure that you keep going. So what is that? When you check in, that's adding fuel. That's how I nurture the relationship. One of your favorite quotes or sayings is there anything I can do for you? John is the only person that I know that says that on a consistent basis. What he's doing when he's saying that, even if my response 99.99% of the time is, I'm good, bro. He's adding fuel to the car, to the relationship, to make sure that you are not stranded on the side of the road because you've ran out of gas, because you keep adding fuel to make sure that I'm not going to allow the relationship fuel tank to run so low that the fuel light comes on. We never get to that point. You know, for me, I'm a person that I don't like my tank to go below half a gallon because I'm on the highway a lot. You know, you may run into a traffic jam, and while you're sitting there, the air is running, and you're nowhere near a gas station, and now you're stuck on the side of the road because you ran out of fuel. When you nurture relationships, you don't have to worry about that, because the people that are in relationship with you and they're attached to you always make sure that your tank never goes below half a tank. They're going to make sure that you can always make it to your destination, whether you have traffic jams, because trust me, in life, you're going to have them. Whether you have a flat tire, whether you have a nail in your tire and you may be cause some delay, trust me, you're going to have them. But if you have the right relationships, they're going to nurture them to the point to where to make sure that one thing you'll never have to worry about is running out of gas, running out of fuel, because you are nurturing that relationship. And just as John said, it doesn't take a lot, bro. One thing I'm learning, I'm not a big talking for an hour on the phone person. I've never been that way. But one thing I'm learning is I can shoot a text message. I can shoot an audio message depending on the person I'm talking to. I know John likes audio messages. So I'm not an audio message person, but because I understand this is the fuel that he needs for his tank, and that's important, because every gas doesn't take unleaded gas. Every car doesn't take unleaded gas, right? Some cars need diesel. Some cars need premium. Depending on what type of tank and what type of car your capacity is, you have to tailor the fuel to the car that you are currently trying to put into. So for John's car, I'm going to give him an audio message because I understand that in relationships, the way that you nurture it is not about the way I receive, it's the way that he needs to receive from me at that moment. So I'm going to give him an audio message. For my wife, I can send her a short text message, and that's totally fine for her. She's not a person that really responds back very quickly. So for me, it's probably picking up the phone, calling her. That's what she needs for me to nurture that relationship. So find out what kind of tank does my inner circle have? What do they need from me in that moment? How can I fuel them to make sure that they never feel stranded, never feel like they have to be on the side of the road, because I'm constantly giving them fuel to where they never have to feel like they're always carrying you to take you on a ride, but you're never contributing gas to make it to the destination.
Wow, that was so powerful. And when Lafayette mentions the love, he talks about like what I prefer as far as messaging, because I'm a words of affirmation kind of guy, honestly.
Okay.
He's coming from there's a book called The 5 Love Languages, and I think most leaders have read that or at least heard of the book and the concept. If they have not, guys, you have to read this book. It is 101 for relationships, especially if you're in a significant other relationship. If you have a spouse or whatever, you have to read this book. I don't even know how you make it without it. But it's not just for that. It's for all relationships. That's the foundation of what you should be reading. And that'll help you get further in business, in family, everything. Because understanding that you treat people right now based on how you like to be treated, meaning if you like gifts, you probably buy people a lot of gifts. Mm-hmm. But the reality is there's people you buy gifts for and they go, oh, wow, thanks. And you think to yourself, they didn't like my gift. This is crap. I don't like them now because they don't like the gift I gave them. Yeah. They're not a gifts person. Nope. I'm not a big gifts person. I have to say thank you and be extra excited about it because I'm just not. But I'll tell you what, when somebody sends me an audio message or a text, like just in gratitude for something, it makes my day like you wouldn't believe. When somebody does something, an act of service for me, oh my goodness, I'm like their best friend for life. It's just how it is. Yeah. My son is very similar to me. But you don't know these things unless you read this book. Yes. You have to understand this is how you nurture relationships. Wow. This is awesome. I love this conversation because we talked about... Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No. I would say, just as John said, read that book, but also there's another book that my wife and I read when we first got married 2 years ago called The 5 Apology Languages. That everybody's apology language is not the same. Some people can accept I'm sorry in the relationship, and this is all a part of nurturing relationships, because some of you are trying to figure out why someone won't forgive you. It's because you haven't figured out their apology language. Sometimes, and I'll have to read it again, but I know one of the apology languages is someone can't accept your apology unless you repent and own up to the mistake. So just saying I'm sorry is they're not gonna receive it. And you're saying, well, I said I'm sorry, I won't. That's because that's not their apology language. So get the 5 love languages first, number 1 for sure. But number 2, and I think it's by Gary Chapman, 5 apology languages. And read that. It'll change your life. I told my wife we're going to read this once a year for our marriage, just to make sure that we're staying on top of it, just as a refresher, because you have to know how to apologize. We don't know innately how to do that. We have to discover that. And when you read that, you'll discover, oh, I didn't even know that about myself, and it'll help you nurture your relationships further. Go ahead, bro.
I love it.
Yeah.
So earlier we started off talking about ride or die.
Yes.
And there's kind of 2 sides to that coin. You have your ride, you have your die.
Yes.
And normally when someone says they're my ride or die, they just mean those are the people who are with me through thick and thin, and they're with me for life.
Yes.
The reality is, most of who you're connected with are not really there with you for life, and I don't think it's out of ill intention. I just think it's because life just has transitions and pivots, and we move. We literally move away. Sometimes we just move away with purpose, and sometimes it's because some people maintain purpose and others don't. And there's a lot of scenarios. But while I really hope to find I have those people when I die that'll carry the casket, what I want even more than that is people to go on the ride with me.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
I told my wife the other day, I said, when I was looking for when I realized I didn't have a network, I said, I knew I had some ride or die, but most of them were just die. Meaning they loved me. I loved them. They'll be there when if something catastrophic happened, and they would be there. I'd be upset and be like, "Oh, John's amazing. He did so much for me," and vice versa, and all these things. I'm not highlighting me. I'm just saying we had this servitude relationship.
Oh, for sure.
But they were no longer on the ride with me.
Yeah.
It was like I said. I told her this is just 2 nights ago. I said they were all just die, and it sounds mean, but they'd be there when it happened. Eventually, we all have to die. And so when that happens, in about 50 years from now, they'll be there. Cool. I'm glad. But who's on the ride with you now? That's what was affecting me for a long time. Like, who's jumping in the vehicle and saying, let's go. We're in this together. Yeah. We're going to go. We may not always be on the exact same path, but we may run parallel for a while, but we're both going in the same direction.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
Bro, I don't know if you realize how deep that question is, because that can be a painful place of reflection. Because many of us have a false portrait of our lives, of who we think we have connected to us, based upon social media, or maybe we are very popular, or we think, I have all these connections, I have all these Facebook friends or Instagram followers and Twitter followers, but to have a place of deep self-reflection to the point of, let me evaluate who's really riding with me, can be a painful reflection, bro. So that's one thought I have with it. And I know why that could, for those listening, some of you may struggle with that. And that's okay. But I think that is the beginning process of you understanding where you stand with yourself and where you stand with others. It's just like the people that struggle with addiction of alcohol. They say the first step is admitting that you have a problem. Well, the first step to seeing if you have a ride or die is admitting if you really have people that you think that are with you or not. And that can be very painful, because they could share your same last name. They could be people that you've been close with all your life. And you have to realize that proximity doesn't also always equal intimacy. So just because you are in proximity of closeness to me doesn't mean that we are close. I talk about this in my upcoming book, bro. And of course, you guys are getting a sneak peek of this about how I didn't want to just be a present father in presence or giving my son presents, but not being present. There's a difference. And John is go check out his masterclass, shameless plug on dads. That's not my lane. I'm just sharing a snippet of what you just sparked in me, bro. Because a lot of us think that we have people that are present around us in our presence, but they are not present in our lives. So just because they are close to you in proximity does not mean they have a level of intimacy that you need to have a valuable relationship for them to be on the ride with you. Some relationships that you are close to, John said, I've lived in Columbus for almost 2 years now. We live an hour away. And some may say, well, that's not very far. Well, it is when you have a family and you're in ministry and you have your own lives and you're successful in your careers and doing all these things. We don't get to see each other every weekend, not even once a month. So we're not close in necessarily proximity, but we have a closer relationship than some people that live within 5 minutes of each other. So I want please think about that. Don't make the assumption that, well, because we have the same last name, or we are close and we go to the same school, or we live in the same neighborhood, or we work at the same job, that equates to intimacy. What counts is not being close in presence, being present, but being present enough to not just where I'm in your presence, but I'm present in your life to show up for you. So I think that is a huge starting point, bro. If you want to talk about what I think about writers, that is my main thought. Don't just have presence, proximity, but be present. And especially those as leaders, those as fathers, those as entrepreneurs, because everything is built, everything starts and ends on relationships. Point blank, period. Relationships are the currency of life. What good is it to have a bank account that is full of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, but you have no relational currency? Shaq, and I'll leave it with this. Shaq talks about how his relationship with Kobe Bryant, and this is public, you know, how great they were together, but how much they did not accomplish because there was two alphas that couldn't share space. Mm-hmm. And for years, bro, they did not talk. Mm-hmm. For years and years and years. And shortly before Kobe Bryant tragically died unexpectedly in a helicopter crash with his daughter on his way to his daughter's basketball game, they had a sit-down conversation one-on-one, him and Shaq, Kobe and Shaq. But they still didn't have a close relationship. And there was a point where they were live on TNT doing a game because Shaq is one of the main commentators after Kobe had died. And you can see how broken he was, not just because visibly of the tears, but the words that he kept saying over and over and over and over again. I wish I would have moved past some of that petty stuff. I wish I would have been more present in my relationship with him. I wish we could have gotten over this. I wish we would have nurtured this relationship. I wish I wouldn't have let my pride and my ego get in the way, because we never know when the ride all of a sudden comes to an end. Kobe wasn't out drunk driving. He wasn't doing anything reckless. He was on his way to take his daughter to a basketball game, as he had done thousands of times before. And it just happened to be his time. So we never know when the ride's going to end. We never know how much time we have. So nurture the relationships, which means you don't have time to be wasting around with people that you think that are connected to you are really not, because it adds no value to you. It adds no value to your life. And life is literally too short. If we live 101 years, bro, it's still too short. there is no long enough life. There's no longevity enough to say. So we have to capitalize on the time that we have. It's not really about how much you have or how many relationships that you have, but what you do with the relationships that you do have. It's not about the quantity. It's about the quality.
Wow. I think we can end on that.
My God, man. Yo.
Yeah, that's a wrap.
Quality over quantity. Listen, guys, stay connected with us here on Unscripted. We appreciate all of you that are rocking with us, and those that may have just jumped on this board, on this train, that we've said before, our ride or dies. I pray that, man, this conversation brings clarity for your life and your direction and for your future. Follow us on all social media platforms at Unscripted Leadership. Our podcast is available on all streaming platforms. And of course, our website there, which will be coming updated and renewed. We have some new things coming down the line, unscripted-leadership.com. Listen, as always, we pray that you be the leader that God has called you to be. We're here to build bridges and not walls. Bridges connect and walls divide. Until next time, God bless you.